As the Toronto Raptors limp across the finish line in this disastrous season, many fans like myself are asking, how did we get here? So in this video, we look at how the front office doomed this team right at the trade deadline. Let's get into it. What is up, Raptors fans? Welcome to Amateur Sports. This is the channel where you get NBA content with a focus on the Toronto Raptors at least 4 days a week. So if you like what you see from today's video and you want more of myself talking about the Raptors in videos just like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below to show your support to the channel. Also follow us on Twitch, twitch.tv/amateursports. We watch along every single Raptors games, plus do a whole lot of other content like video game content. So link is in the description. So let's get into our topic for today. So as you saw from the title, this video was about how the front office doomed this Toronto Raptors team. And from the start of the season, there were a lot of high hopes for this team from myself. I thought that this team, who was the 2 seed in the NBA last season, was going to have a little bit of a regression here, but I did not predict that this would be the outcome from, starting 2-8 and getting up to 17-17, and then the COVID hits, lose 5 in a row, and then we have the awful March where we only win 1 game. It just all fell apart very quickly. There were so many things against us this season. It was playing in Tampa, playing 72 road games where even when there is a crowd behind us in Tampa Bay, most of the people in the crowd are cheering for the team that we're actually playing against. There was the COVID thing that kept some of our players out and also gave a horrible virus to 2 of our biggest players, Siakam and VanVleet, who maybe even still aren't quite back to 100% here. So lots of things went wrong for the Raptors, and it really put a big divide between the fans. There was, let's say, I'd go for about 35 to 40% of the fans on the full tank bandwagon. Everybody on that side wanting the tank, and I'd say about 60% of people were just still supporting this team, wanting them to win games. There was a pretty big divide, and a pretty harsh divide that led to a lot of arguments amongst the Raptors community online. And I think each side was entitled to their opinion. I could see why people wanted to tank, especially with the way this tumultuous season unfolded. And there's just people who are too proud, like myself. We just can't bear to watch this team lose. We can't bear to want this team to lose. We want this team to win every game. Go make a playoff push. That's what it's all about. Winning. Winning is the best thing. But the Raptors didn't do a ton of that this season. And a lot of the blame is going to be put on the front office. And the front office, they really put us in a sour position to start the season. But at the deadline is where they really doomed us. And we're going to kind of progress into how we get to the trade deadline and where it really, really went south for the front office. So, start of the season, before the season even begins, in fact, the Raptors have a good draft, and I'm excited for what they can produce this season. We end up losing Serge Ibaka and Marc Gasol. I think it was on the same day that we also signed Aaron Baines. Now, I will admit, I was completely wrong about Aaron Baines, and I think a lot of people were. Aaron Baines produced some fantastic numbers for the Phoenix Suns the season prior to this one, where he was putting up almost 12 points per game in usually a bench role, but when DeAndre Ayton got suspended for 25 games and maybe there's injuries, Baines had to start and was playing fantastically, shooting 48% from the field, 35% from 3. We thought that would transition into a starting role with the Raptors. Didn't pan out. So, sure, you can blame a little bit on the front office for that, not sorting out the center roles early on. But, Aaron Baines, I thought, was a very good candidate for the Raptors. Just didn't work out. And it clearly didn't work out. He was awful for the Raptors. You can see now, having gotten our center, how much better this Raptors team can be, but with all the guys resting. Not foolproof. However, over the course of that first part of the season, Raptors started 2-8. Aaron Baines wasn't particularly good, wasn't performing well. So I thought, maybe give him a little bit of time to develop, and that's what happened. Aaron Baines kind of grew into the role, and the Raptors went to 17-17. But, as losses started to pile up, it became evident that he was not going to be the guy for us. So there was this whole period before the trade deadline where the front office really could have gotten a center to help out this team, get us through some tough stretches. That did not happen. And when that did not happen, the Raptors fell apart and took themselves out of a very good playoff race. So now, all of a sudden, that is where the tanking kind of word started to come out, and people were asking for the tank. This is as we kind of creep up to the deadline where a lot of the people, a lot of the community wanted to tank. And I could understand why, but I was still sold that the Raptors could turn it around. But it would all be based on the trade deadline. And here's where we get to the trade deadline. With all the confusion piling up for Raptors fans. We didn't know what this team wanted. There was just a discrepancy. The Raptors weren't playing well. So did the front office want to make a good trade to go for it and try to be a better team? Or did they want to make a bit of a negative trade? One that would be an even trade, but would make us worse so that we could start to tank. I thought that leading up to the trade deadline, all this confusion would be put to bed because the front office would make a decision, a clear decision as to what the priority would be for the rest of the season. Would that be go for the playoffs or would that be going for the tank? And then after the deadline, I was left even more confused because the Raptors front office did not make that decision. They kept it basically as is because the Raptors, they traded Norman Powell for Gary Trent Jr. and Rodney Hood. Now, that trade is looking better all the time. Gary Trent's looking great, but considering what we have this season, that trade made us just slightly worse, but didn't commit to a tank. And I think that one of the biggest mistakes of this season was not trading Kyle Lowry, who since the trade deadline, say what you want about Kyle Lowry. Kyle Lowry is still a great player. I fully support that. His IQ is going to keep him very relevant in the league for years to come. However, why would you keep Kyle Lowry, not trade him for assets, when he's only played 9 of the 24 games since the trade deadline? We played 24 games since the trade deadline. Kyle Lowry has featured in less than half, 9 out of 24. So what was the point of keeping him if you're not going to play him? Because if the team was kept as is, you feel like the front office wanted to try to make a push. And I think that signing Khem Birch was a testament to that because they made the team a lot better by bringing in Khem Birch. The Raptors started to win, a few more games than usual when they brought in Khem Birch, but still, all the resting. Fred VanVleet been rested a lot. OG Anunoby been rested a lot. And Kyle Lowry more than everybody else. The only player who really hasn't been rested a ton is Siakam. Didn't get a ton of days off. Has been playing a lot of basketball. Been playing some very good basketball, I might add. But why would the front office not pull the trigger on one of these trades to keep Kyle Lowry till the end of the season? So now our choice at the end of the season for Kyle Lowry become, do we want to pay him upwards of $20 million to, maybe take a bit of a subdued role in this team? Do we still want him to be the guy on our team? Or do we want to let him walk in free agency, free up some cap space? Or do we want to sign and trade him? Now, I think that the Raptors are really looking towards a sign and trade maneuver here because the way they were aggressively pursuing a trade for Lowry at the deadline was seemingly that the Raptors wanted to trade him. So therefore, they couldn't trade him then. They're going to sign him, trade him now. And why a sign and trade situation would work for the Raptors and for Kyle Lowry and for other teams who want Kyle Lowry is because the Raptors have his bird rights and Kyle Lowry makes a lot of money and he's old. He's old. You don't want to pay older guys that much money. So teams who want to bring in Kyle Lowry are going to need his bird rights if they really are going to solidify themselves as a contender. And teams like the Miami Heat have used sign and trade situations before to acquire guys like Jimmy Butler. So Miami would be open to a sign and trade. It's possible for a sign and trade for Lowry. But the biggest, most confusing thing about all of this is that the Raptors have probably been trying to tank since the trade deadline. Resting players and all that. It looks like they have been trying to tank. Yet at the trade deadline, they didn't commit to it by making the team worse. They stood in this kind of purgatory situation where they weren't good enough to push on and make a playoff push, but they weren't bad enough to tank. They left us in that really awkward zone. And it doesn't make sense why the Raptors front office did not commit to one way or another way because it seems like they wanted to tank, yet they didn't have the guts to trade those assets at the deadline. I really am trying to figure out why the Raptors decided to keep Kyle Lowry and not go for some prospects and some picks and some assets for, the future. Why did they bother keeping him just to play him in 9 out of the remaining 24 games? Is it because Kyle Lowry is such a great guy, in the locker room that he can help out some of the younger guys that have been playing a lot more recently, like Malachi Flynn? I really don't think you want to pay a guy $30 million to be a great guy for the dressing room. Kyle Lowry makes a lot of money, and I think he's going to ask for around $25 million at the end of the season. Kyle Lowry is still a really good player, and you know what? If he is on the Raptors next season, then I think he's going to provide a lot of benefit to the Raptors. But do we want to be paying him around that $25 million mark to maybe not have as big of a role as other guys who are making that amount of money? I don't quite think that is the best thing for the Raptors to do. So I do think Kyle Lowry will be on a different team next season. And if that's the case, you're kind of handcuffed in sign and trade negotiations. If you could even make a sign and trade work, you're kind of handcuffed. You won't be able to get as good of a return as you would have gotten at the trade deadline. Masai Ujiri, he never wants to lose a trade. So, he held firm in those negotiations. But with some of the pieces that were available and some of the pieces that, Philly, Miami, and LA were maybe considering offering, it does kind of make me question what the motivation here for keeping Kyle Lowry was. It truly does confuse me. And I think that ultimately, I don't know what happened in those trade deadline negotiations. Maybe Masai Ujiri was just not wanting to get fleeced and just really held firm on his negotiations. But I think it was a big mistake from this front office not committing to a tank, not committing to trading Kyle Lowry, because trading Norman Powell for Gary Trent Jr. made our team slightly worse. Maybe in the long run, Gary Trent's going to be a better player than Norman Powell, and I do support that. But at the moment, this present moment right now, Norman Powell is a better player than Gary Trent Jr. And Norman Powell may have walked in the season. Gary Trent we're probably going to get back because he is a restricted free agent, so we can match any offer sheet that does come his way. And I think he'll be making around $17 million next season. Whoever gives him that, and the Raptors will match anything that does come his way. But right now, why we didn't commit to being a team on the tank, but still wanting to tank by, sitting a lot of players, this team had enough talent to win enough of those games. So they didn't commit to one way or another way. And I think that is how the front office doomed this Raptors team, because, seventh best odds is likely what we're going to be having at the lottery, maybe even the eighth best odds at the first overall pick. But if the management and the front office wanted to have that even better odds, why did they not commit to it at the deadline? Why did they not make it obvious to the fan base as to what their plans were? That is what I was really hoping for at the deadline, and the front office of this Toronto Raptors team, who have done great work. I will say, I haven't said it yet. This front office, I have full faith in them to turn this thing around. Even if Masai Ujiri isn't part of it, I have full faith in the likes of Bobby Webster to turn this ship around or get us back on track. They have done so many great things over the year. This season has just been a blemish on the front office. And, the whole organization, the team hasn't done well. The front office hasn't done well. It's just an ugly year that we all want to see come to an end. But I think that the front office really put us in a difficult situation this season and did not fix it at the trade deadline when they really had the opportunity to do so. I have full faith, again, that they will turn us around, and I support them in what they're going to do in this upcoming offseason, but we have to acknowledge what kind of position they did put us in this season. They're not washed by any means, but this was a tough season and a bitter pill to swallow. Let me know all of your thoughts and opinions on the front office in the comments down below. But that wraps up for me for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you are still, be sure to like the video if you did like at any point to help us reach some new viewers. It really goes a long way to helping with engagement on the channel. And follow us on Twitch, twitch.tv/amateursports. We watch along every single Raptors game, and in the offseason, we'll be watching a lot of the playoffs, playing a bunch of video games, lots of great content, and a great community of people on the Twitch link down below. Also, check out the merch while you are down there. Next to my head, you can find a couple more videos. The most recent video on the channel, as well as another video that you may like, as well as the subscribe button. Hit that subscribe button on our road to 3,000 subscribers. Get involved on that grind. At the end of the day, we leave what I say. If you disagree, that is okay. We'll see you again next time for another video.